You know, some people are teachers, others are poets, or maybe warriors. But what if someone was all three? In a time of just deep social darkness, she lit a flame so powerful it's still burning today. This is the incredible story of Savitribai Phule, one of history's most important and bravest revolutionaries.
I mean, really let that question sink in. What if the simple act of opening a book was seen as a crime? If just wanting to learn could get you attacked? For millions in 19th century India, this wasn't some hypothetical question. It was their day-to-day reality.
So, to really get why Savitribai was so amazing, you have to understand the world she was born into. We're talking about a society locked down by a rigid caste system. Gender inequality, it was absolute. And education for girls? Well, it wasn't just frowned upon, it was completely forbidden. And for widows, life was basically a sentence of suffering. This was the darkness she was about to challenge.
To see how she even began this fight, we've got to go right back to the beginning, to a world that tried to decide her entire future before she could even choose it for herself. Savitribai was born in 1831 to a family of farmers, and as was the custom, she was married off when she was just 9 years old to a man named Jyotirao Phule. Now, a marriage like that was supposed to limit her world, to define her. But this one ended up igniting a revolution, because her husband, Jyotirao, started teaching her to read and write at home, and that small act was her call to adventure.
Now, what's so radical about this is why he did it. You see, Jyotirao Phule was a social reformer himself, from a lower caste. He believed that the caste system and the oppression of women were basically two sides of the same coin. And he knew the only way to break those chains was through education, for everyone. This shared vision became the bedrock of their entire lives.
And this gets to the heart of what her education was really about. For Savitribai, this wasn't just about learning for herself. It was about getting the tools she needed to completely transform society. Every letter she learned, every word she read, became a weapon against injustice. She wasn't just learning to read books, she was learning how to rewrite the rules of the world.
And this knowledge, you can bet it didn't stay locked up at home. No. It fueled her very first historic act of rebellion, turning her own learning into a beacon for countless others.
1848. Remember this year, because this is when Savitribai and Jyotirao did something that was absolutely unthinkable. They opened India's first ever school for girls in Pune. And let me tell you, this was not just a school, it was a declaration of war on a deeply oppressive system.
And society pushed back hard. The idea that girls, especially girls from lower castes, could get an education, it was seen as a massive threat to the entire social order. So the reaction wasn't just a bit of disapproval. It was raw, violent hatred.
I want you to just imagine her daily walk. Every single day, just to get to her school, she had to endure a constant barrage of abuse. People shouting insults, threatening her. They literally threw stones at her. They pelted her with mud and cow dung, all in an effort to humiliate her, to break her, to make her stop.
So how did she respond to all that hate? Her solution was as simple as it was powerful. She just carried a second sari with her. She'd arrive at the school, covered in filth, and she would simply change into her clean sari and start teaching. They could dirty her clothes, sure, but they could never, ever touch her resolve.
Her mission grew so fast, way beyond just education. She saw that the fight for equality had to be fought on every front. She had to challenge every single pillar of injustice she saw.
I mean, just look at the sheer scope of her work. The injustices she took on were massive. For widows who faced this brutal reality, having their heads shaved, being completely isolated, she created a home where they could live with dignity. When pregnant widows were often forced into infanticide, she opened a care center to save their children. And against the cruelty of the caste system, she opened her schools to everyone, giving the so-called untouchables a chance, a real opportunity. And here's the thing, they didn't just preach these values, they lived them, through and through. Savitribai and Jyotirao adopted a son, Yeshwantrao, who was born to a widow in their care center. With that one act, they challenged all the ideas about caste purity and family, and they showed the world what real compassion, what true humanity actually looks like.
But Savitribai wasn't just an activist on the ground. She was also a brilliant intellectual, a writer, and a leader whose ideas were the fuel for the whole movement. Just listen to her own words from her book of poetry. Go, get education, be self-reliant, be industrious, work, gather wisdom and riches. This is not just a poem,
It's a manifesto. It's a call to action. At a time when women were expected to be completely silent, her voice was a roar, urging everyone who was oppressed to wake up and claim their power through knowledge.
Then, when her husband and partner Jyotirao passed away, Savitribai didn't back down, not for a second. She stepped up. She took full control of their organization, the Satya Shodak Samaj, or Truth Seeker Society. She presided over the meetings, she guided its mission, she proved to a deeply patriarchal world that women are not just followers, they are formidable leaders.
And this brings us to her final act of service, a moment that just perfectly captures her entire life's philosophy and cements her incredible legacy.
In 1897, the bubonic plague, a deadly disease, swept through Pune. While most people ran in fear, Savitribai, who was 66 years old at the time, did the exact opposite. She ran towards the danger. She set up a clinic and personally cared for the sick, even carrying patients on her own back to get them to the hospital. It was in this final heroic act of service that she caught the plague herself and passed away. She didn't just teach about humanity, she lived it, right until her last breath.
So when we look back at our life, who was Savitribai Phule? Well, she was the pioneer who kicked open the doors of education for the women of India.
She was an absolutely relentless fighter who took on the deep, ugly roots of caste discrimination. And above all, she was a powerful, unwavering voice for every single person that society had tried to silence. Let that really sink in. She walked through a shower of stones so that generations of others could walk into classrooms. Her struggle, her pain, her unbelievable courage, it paved a path for the future. Savitribai Phule didn't just live ahead of her time. She fundamentally changed time itself. That flame of knowledge and compassion she lit, it transformed a nation. So the question for all of us now is, who's going to carry that flame forward today?